clicked on the leave meeting instead of get. Okay, we're back. Oh, glitch there. Anyway, okay. We are going to talk nutrition here on social distillation because Sam teased it and it made me think of something that made my brain explode. So it's going to have to make your brain explode. So I saw this on Louder with Crowder, which I watch because it makes me laugh, and I need a laugh every once in a while, even if I don't always like their style. And they had this as a TikTok video, and that kind of thing always annoys me. It's like when a main media outlet gives a story and its source is some idiot on Twitter who said something. I'm like, okay, so what? It's a TikTok video. I was looking for that to make your brain explode. And instead, I found things that made my brain explode because I went down a rabbit hole of, oh, dear God, it's not just some idiot on TikTok. Okay, so here we go.
I need to.
Addressing systemic racism in nutrition.
Interesting.
Yes, it starts off with a quote about how racism is a public health emergency. Thanks, The Lancet, what is supposed to be a major medical journal.
Well, that was also an announcement by the CDC.
Black populations have higher rates of type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and obesity compared to white populations. Okay. And yes, these things happen. And of course, the automatic assessment is systemic racism. Okay.
Well, so I was unprepared for this, but
okay, did it switch to the next article?
Now it has, yeah.
Okay. Racism needs to be part of the conversation about dismantling diet culture. Yes, apparently diet culture is a thing now. And it is also racist because it doesn't take into account ethnic differences in diet and ethnic differences in body shape. Okay. Body positivity was originally created as an antithesis to diet culture and to help marginalized people, read fat, queer, trans, bodies of color, and more, okay, feel worthy of self-love because for too long society told them they weren't. I didn't realize that, but okay. These days, however, body positivity hashtags on social media are often flooded with photos of non-marginalized bodies, read cis, thin, white women.
So I want to know how you can tell that is a cis woman, or not a cis woman. Never mind. I put two terms together. Cis means you just identify with your gender. Mm-hmm. Well, how can you tell it's a cis woman? She may be on the runway and then dress as a dude otherwise because she thinks she's a dude.
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell that by looking at them? But go on.
Well, what I was going to say is that if I didn't realize where this was coming from, that sentence would make me think I was reading a parody article because it's so absurd. But it's also kind of cruel and contrary to what these people are supposedly all about. In the sentence you just wrote was about people being worthy of self-love, and then you go on to say, and the movement has been co-opted by people who were never intended to be the center of these conversations. So if you don't have the right identification markers, you're not worthy of self-love. Is that sure is what it sounds like you're saying?
That is what it sounds like they're saying, and it's the same. It's on the same vein as our to be anti-racist to us is actually so racist in the assumptions you have to make. You have to make assumptions that they're not capable of X, Y, Z, and in this case, it would be self-love, which is fine. But we're gonna look at this a little bit objectively. It doesn't matter how much you love yourself if you eat too much sugar and you get diabetes. The self-love is independent. of the nutrition and diet aspect of that. I can love myself and just really also love tacos and still get fat.
Mhm.
Uh, it's conflating two things that shouldn't be conflated together. Okay, here we go. What do we got here?
And now just, you know, again, to make brain explode more, is it's in professional medical journals that just from the title, I would think this was part of the, what was it? Was it Evergreen State? Was that where the was that the people that
Yeah, Evergreen.
that
Yeah.
that basically punked a lot of professional journals in the humanities with nonsense papers?
Oh no, no,
And
you're thinking of the uh, the hoax papers.
yeah.
Evergreen was where the riot happened.
Yeah, okay. And that
Yeah.
was
Now they've kind of communicated back and forth on that story, but yeah,
examining the impact of structural racism on food insecurity. No, this is real. And this is in the National Library of Medicine, National Institutes of Health. Yeah.
I'm trying to read
So-
real fast here, which I don't do well. I don't read fast. Structural racism. Oh God, I could go so many ways with this. Well, let me start with grad school. So I had an epidemiology course, and the professor was an adjunct, and her big mission was the good was a good cause. So these all start with a good cause, and she was actually really cool, really good person. I liked her as an instructor, but we did clash on this because I do tend to be a very practical person. And I think that's nurture because I grew up really poor, and you try to find solutions that actually work versus solutions that sound good. And so her passion was the fact that the in the U.S. we have this almost in the Western world. We'll say the Western world, but U.S. is the worst offender. Is we have this phenomenon where our poor people are fatter than our rich people.
mm-hmm.
Which, if you go to a third world country, it's the other way around
Mm-hmm.
because you need to be able to have access to resources to get fat. And so we have this phenomenon that's the other way around. And a lot of it, especially in inner cities, is availability, accessibility of the food you need, being able to go to a grocery store, to go home and cook food for your family, the time to do that. In some of these projects, you don't even have a hot plate to cook on, so that's a worthy cause. That is something that does need to be addressed. But then on the other flip side of it, her solution was we need farmers markets in these neighborhoods. And I'm like, you're not going to get a farmer's market in, downtown Minneapolis, where they're likely to get, robbed or shot or something along those lines. So that it was this really privilege-minded solution
Hey, this
to a
works in
real
my
world
community.
problem.
Yeah, this works in my community. It'll work
organic
anywhere.
food is better, so everybody should eat all organic and grass-fed. It's like, well, it is technically a little bit better, but at the same time, if I'm taking someone who's eating McDonald's every day, and I get them to at least just cook 2 meals a week, they're going to have a benefit. And so it's this very detached solution because it's not reasonable. And so it is a real world problem. Now, to call it structurally racist is where we're going down that social justice rabbit hole, because any inequity becomes structural racism, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So
and you're completely ignoring what you just brought up, is that if you look at these numbers and start holding as many variables possible, or sifting out as many variables as possible, you find an awful lot of overlap between races with income. So you say, oh, look, well, the sad fact is you have a higher proportion of Black and Latino people who are poorer than white people. Okay. So if you just look at the raw numbers, then, oh my gosh, yeah, Black and Latino populations are unhealthier. Well, unfortunately, they're also poorer. So if you take that into account and you just look at just the poor white people, you see an awful lot of overlap in these numbers.
Well, and it's the argument. So this is where the structural racism people get it a little bit right, is a lot of the things that exist have a greater impact on that community.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that inner city communities, poor inner city communities suck is a real thing. And the fact that more ethnic minorities live in those situations is a real thing. The solution, though, isn't the whole place is racist, because they're, even if it may be a reflection of a racist something in the past, way back, the going forward is just people not treating it like treating it with real solutions versus these grandiose policy shifts that either steer us towards more authoritarianism or make some person like Ibram X. Kendi rich. So it's a mixture of something that does exist versus the people who bait you off the existence of that, and who are the real grifters in this world, realistically, in this country anyways. And so treating it like the structural racism thing is not helping anybody. Treating it like an inner city problem will help people. A poor problem will help people. And it's going to help inner city blacks. It's going to help inner city whites. It's going to help inner city Hispanics. It's going to help inner city mixed. If you treat it as an inner city problem. And that's where we're going wrong, is we're not treating. So these articles are a distraction from the problem. Now, there's another element I want to bring into this, and I'm going to use an Italian for my example, because I have a client. His last name is very Italian. I'm not going to say it, but you would know what his heritage is just by hearing his name. So he goes to Ohio every year for the Italian Fest up in, I think it's Cleveland area, which is a lot of his family plus all the Italians from that area get together and they have this big giant fair, and they do all you can eat pasta competitions. His brother runs a stromboli cart, and it's basically a week long of mingling, drinking, and eating. And and so this is the culture he's in. Now, where he grew up, or how he grew up, he would tell the story. Now, he's overweight, and we're struggling with diet habits with him, because he's doing the right things with exercise, but you're not going to lose weight if you're still eating like you're used to, if you have bad eating habits. And he was talking about being a kid and how you would go to all these different houses on these different occasions, and they would stuff you and then give you another plate and get offended if you didn't eat it. And then you went to the next house and you got the same thing, stuff you, and they'd get offended if you couldn't eat it. So you're just eating and eating and eating. And if you didn't eat, you offended somebody. Now that habit from a kid is carried over to his adult life, because he eats way too damn much. And he eats a lot of pasta and all these things that are good in normal amounts or small amounts, or but not if you just eat till you're full, and you take a lot to get full. So these habits, that's a cultural thing. That was the Italian culture where he grew up. Now let's go to our mutual friend that we have social justice arguments with all the time on social media. I remember a time when we went to a barbecue at another person's house, and he was making the barbecue sauce. And he took, was it Head Country? One of those already sweet barbecue sauces, poured it into a pot and started adding brown sugar to it. And someone in the room said, "You're adding sugar to Head Country?" And he started talking about Mama's recipe and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, that's actually a cultural thing. Yeah. You know, we talked about Southern cooking and all these fatty meats or whatever. Those are cultural things. And the same people that are writing the articles you just showed me, or using those articles you just showed me to say this thing is a systemic issue, are the same people adding the sugar to the sauce, or adding the fat to make something more flavorful, or complaining that white people don't have flavor in their food. Well, guess what? Guess where that flavor came from? That same thing that gives you diabetes. So there is a cultural aspect to it. And if we don't, and if we just say everything is racist, we never address that either, because it's racist to address it.
Mm-hmm. It's racist to say, well, hold on a second. The things that is the things that affect the health of inner city blacks share a lot of similarities with the things that help rural whites that are, they're both poor. They both have limited access to quality nutrition, etc., and so forth. The other thing that's not addressed that you kind of touched on, but annoys me, is the idea that they don't eat, that people in these situations don't eat healthy because they can't afford it. That's crap. Fast food is expensive.
With the exception,
junk food is expensive.
Yeah, with the exception of what I was talking about with inner city unavailability of cooking mechanisms such as hot plates or stoves or whatever. So accepting those people.
Right.
But yeah, the traditional, it's expensive to eat healthy, only applies if you go all organic, all grass fed and everything. I can give a personal anecdote on this. You remember Fat Me from college, right? So chicken fried steak all the time and eating and eating and eating and eating. And then when I lost
all you can
the
eat
weight,
cafeterias that had chicken fried steak and mashed potatoes every day.
So the quick story is, I was a skinny kid in high school, but we were pretty poor. So I was working all the time and we didn't get to just eat as much as we wanted and stuff like that. So I was pretty skinny. And then I went to college with Heath and I was his roommate, and I got this little meal card and you swipe it at, Kerr Hall or wherever. And they say, you mean if I stay in here, I could just eat however much I want for that one little swipe? And it was the unlimited card. So I was like, I could go whenever I wanted. And they're like, yeah, it's all you can eat. Hell. All right, then chicken fried steak. Can you do 2 scoops of mashed potatoes? All right, gravy. Six times through that line. And then we always went to the hall that had the female cookies, no nuts. And so eat all the cookies I could, and then the mystery cube, which was apparently Jello and whipped cream.
Yep.
To make this amazing little cube that was disgustingly great. And so I was doing that 3 times a day, 4 times a day, every day, and I gained my freshman 80 halfway through the freshman semester, and then maintained that for about 1998 to 2005. So 7 years, I maintained those extra 80 pounds. But then I ended up getting divorced from my first wife, and we got divorced in the time when it was my turn to go back to school, because we had done the thing where I worked and she went to school. And so I was poor. I was really poor, making minimum wage, just working 2 jobs, and I dropped out of school again. And all I ate for 3 months was rice and beans. I stopped eating junk food because I couldn't afford it. Like you said, it's $8 to have any kind of value meal anymore, wherever you go. So that's not super cheap. And so I stopped eating junk food, which I was eating 2 or 3 times a day before that, and basically made a pot of beans and a pot of rice and ate on that throughout the week. And when you eat the same thing every day, every meal, you just start eating when you're hungry. You don't eat when you just want to eat. And I lost 80 pounds in 3 months. So to say poor is the reason why you're fat. Poor is the reason why I'm not fat right now. But it also took that ability to cook those rice and beans and to store them in a refrigerator. So,
that I have for a long time now thought that it's not the money per se of why poorer people are more overweight and have the health issues associated with being overweight. It's a time issue. It's an energy issue. You have People who tend to work long hours tend to work in more physically taxing jobs. You don't want to cook when you get done working. You're tired. Okay.
Mhm.
And if if both parents are working, or if it's a single parent home, that's going to be passed on to the kids because I'm too freaking tired to cook. We're both too freaking tired to cook.
Which is the way it was when I was a kid. We each,
Mhm.
there were three of us kids old enough to do something like that. There was a fourth one in the household, but uh, we had three things we cooked and we rotated.
Mhm.
And through those 9 things, every 9 days it recycled,
Yep.
and we had that rotation as kids. So it was passed on to the kids.
Yeah.
The I was supporting your point, but I had somewhere where I was going to go. Go ahead and go on, and I'll try
Well,
to.
the point being that uh that cooking healthier, cooking actual food, making actual meals rather than getting either ready-made meals or just going through a drive-through on the way home, it is significantly cheaper, but it is also a significantly more uh, in
Energy
investment of
expended,
time.
yeah,
Yeah,
investment of
time and
energy,
energy.
yeah.
You've got to have the energy and the time to make, even if it's just a pot of rice and beans. You got
Mhm.
to have the energy and time to do that.
Yeah, and the way I do things, I think I developed this habit back in those days, is I'll I'll cook things uh, that I can cook in bulk, like a pot of rice and beans, or a whole big tray full of chicken, or something that I can cook in bulk, and then I just pick at it throughout the week in different combinations
Yeah.
thereof. And I developed that habit because they were also, not only were they the things I can cook in bulk, but things that I can do other things while they're cooking.
Yeah.
So if I, nowadays it's something more enjoyable, like watching a game or something like that. But back then it would be something where I could throw it in a pot, get it going, and it needs to cook for an hour so I could do my homework if I was in school, or something along those lines. So the bulk concept does work. But let me also throw another wrinkle in this whole discussion, is the effect of stress on your body,
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
effect of socioeconomic status on stress. Because the biggest contributors to stress, or the biggest alleviators of stress, are control, perception of improvement, and those are two of the biggest ones, and status, where you feel like you are in society versus where you actually are. And this is where we actually get, it makes a little bit more sense of why a conservative argument here that seems to be valid and seems to be a zinger, but it's not really, is our poorest are better off than the rich in a lot of other countries,
Mhm.
right? So first world problems, right? Our poor people have more than middle class in most African countries or most South American countries. And
Yeah.
so, well, if that's the case, why are they complaining? Is the argument. Well, your perception of where you are within a system actually creates stress. So yeah, they're better off than someone in South America, but they're not comparing themselves with someone in South
They
America.
don't live in South America.
Yeah, they don't live in South America. They don't see it every day. What they see is, young privileged lawyer's kid driving in his Mercedes through their neighborhood to get to his, club on the other end. It's that's what they're comparing themselves to. It. So that actually creates stress. And in a hierarchical primate structures, is that stress is relative to those stratifications. And so now we go into the science of stress and fat, is when you're being barraged by stress hormones constantly, you don't lose fat as well. Your body holds on to it. You have more inflammation in your system, which causes less movement, which causes fat to hold on. And then all of these other health factors that go along with a constant barrage of stress hormones, like cardiac issues, increased rates of cancer, et cetera. So just the fact that you're on a lower socioeconomic rung creates a stressful internal situation in your body. And so, yeah, the same exercise doesn't this is one I heard on, it was a blip from some TV show, but it's been shown that Black women can do the same exercise and not get the same benefit as a white woman. But they're comparing the low SES Black woman to the middle class white girl that goes to Lifetime Fitness. It's not the fact that she's Black, it's the fact that she's in this SES situation where she's creating more stress hormones, which creates a different outcome from your exercise. Mm-hmm. And then what I'd like to postulate that we know this from social status, but or economic status, excuse me. We know this from economic status, but I would like to also put out the notion that if you have an ideology that says you're a local social status because of your color, that's got to play into it as well, because it's lower social status in general. Economics is just one identifier in your social status. So if you're being told that you're a lower citizen because of your skin color, that's got to have an effect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can give you examples of how it does, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole just yet.
Well, we don't have time for rabbit holes because I got.
No, we don't have time for rabbit holes.
5 minutes here.
So the point being, and I mentioned this before, is that because you brought up the problem with the conservative libertarian argument about how the poor in this country in this time are so much better off than anywhere around the world, or even in America 40 years ago, 50 years ago, which is true. I mean, if you're just looking at one factor, that factor being physical things that they have. Yeah, okay. But there's more to life than just that. There's more to the person than just that. And perception determines your perception of reality, okay? Your position. And you have to acknowledge that to be able to address that. So we started out talking about cultural diets beyond skin color, just how you grew up. And so the habits you get with eating, that's your perception of how you approach food. That's your perception of what mealtime is. You have to recognize that and make that part of how you address that, or you're never going to fix it.
Well, we keep kind of circling around the exact same themes, how everything is the same when we talk about relationships and how we are this way because of our biology, we are this way because of our culture. That all plays into it. And when you understand those things, you're like, oh, that's why I have this problem. It's not an excuse. It's something I have to account for. And the fact that we are pretty much adapted to love an Oreo cookie is not because Oreos existed back in the day. It's because we craved sugar, fat, and salt, because there were things that were hard to get in nature. And part of that is genetic because of how we evolved. And the other part is cultural because of how that evolution played out in our younger years, or even in the eating habits of our mother while we were in her body. So if we take that holistic approach to understand all these things, then you can account for them. And so if I'm someone who's complaining about my large size and my health problems, and I'm adding that extra brown sugar to my already sugar-filled barbecue sauce because it didn't have enough flavor, maybe I need to start weaning that down so at some point that barbecue sauce has enough flavor. Or start using other spices like peppers. Shit, you can get a lot of flavor out of a pepper and still have a good health benefit from it. Whereas you can keep adding sugar and sugar and sugar, which is going to keep reducing your taste bud count, because high sugar diets reduce your taste bud count by about 25%.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
And it's recoverable, but it takes time. So you can go either route. You can pick a healthy way to add flavor and know there's going to be a growing pain period, or you can keep doing what you're doing and say, well, that's just who I am. And then blame society.
That's a good conclusion for this nutrition talk of kind of what we've said in general about fitness is stop making stupid excuses for your unhealthy situation and unhealthy habits, and look at them as honestly as possible and evaluate yourself as honestly as possible if you actually want to change.
And I think, how far are you on your bell curve guy? Murray book.
Not very. I keep going down rabbit holes of data.
Oh, okay. So I do want to tease for that when we finally have that conversation, because it plays into exactly what we're talking about right now. And one of his big things is the violent crime rate is one of the big issues. And we go along that same path with SES status and violence. It actually has a biological basis. And I think this is something he missed, because he's like, well, this is what it is, and I don't know why. Here's the data. But when you actually look at everything all the way down to rat studies, to non-human primates, to then humans, there is a pattern with social status stratification and violent crime rate. So and there's reasons behind it. So I think this was a good kind of tease into that, because of the effects of that same stratification on the stress that makes it hard to maintain health as well. So, but doesn't mean you can't do anything about it. So bad habits in a bad situation are worse than good habits in a bad situation. That's just the way it is. Now you may not get the greatest effects that you could if you were in a better situation, but at the same time, you're working on an improvement, whether that's physical or getting yourself out of that situation or whatever. You should be trying all of those, but the focus needs to be on the mitigating the effects of that stratification versus black, white, Hispanic, etc. And then, okay, so if we are going to take culture into account, how is the culture playing into the bad habits, and how can we mitigate those effects? I mean, what do we be proud of in that same situation? So, all right.
It's a good conclusion / tease combo there. So we will see y'all next time.
All right. Peace out.